Hello, everybody. This is me bringing me into Bring Your Own Diagnosis Day, or at least that's what I'm calling it on this video. You guys might have had a better name, I don't know. So, where do the diagnoses start? Well, I don't know. I'm going to start in childhood, and I bet you I was probably ADHD. In modern times, I'll bet you some sort of medication would have been suggested for me with my little inattention and squirrel brain. But as we all know, you really can't separate internal functioning from environment. So was I nature or nurture? So on the other side of things, I was also the only child of a single parent growing up. She was gone 12 hours a day working because she had to go into the city and back. And then even at home, she was taking care of her mother with Alzheimer's. So, though she was a loving mother, we can't say that she had a whole lot of time for me. So, if there was a diagnosis that was called idle hands are the devil's plaything, I would qualify for that diagnosis. Finding a formal diagnosis, of course, becomes more tricky. Sounds familiar, right? So I'll leave that part at that, but it's a cornerstone. And I am going to bet that there was some attachment effects on that. More on that a little bit later. After that, I would say throughout my life, the primary diagnosis that I would receive is not something that's clearly in the DSM. Take or leave whatever from the DSM. But I'll say it's all around grief and loss. And that grief and loss started with the passing of my mom when I was 26 years old. Now, where this ties in with attachment is I remember very clearly when my mom passed away, the sentiment that I had going on is that I had lost my home base. Even though my mom wasn't around a lot, she was still my mom. She was actually my only family member. I didn't even know my dad at the time. I didn't really know or wasn't really in touch with any extended family. She was my family. So for all intents and purposes, the feeling at the time was when she died, my entire family died, was lost. And the feeling I had, and the words I remember just appearing in my head is that I'd lost my home base. My home base was no longer there. So I was kind of floating in the mists, so to speak. One of the places where I really noticed that is, well, actually, I can back up a little bit. One of the things that happened with me is that when my mom was sick, I was taking care of her, and that was starting at around 18. And so there's a number of years of taking care of her, and I've lived with the guilt of not having necessarily done the best job, but having done a job nonetheless. So there's feelings. Is there a diagnosis for that? I don't know. But at the same time, I was also angry that I was in that position. And all I wanted to do is be a 20-year-old who's spreading their wings, doing their thing. Family's not so important. You come back to that later. But no, I was dragged right back in. One of the things that I did a lot in that era, as much as I talk about biking now, is probably as much as I talked about climbing then. I was a huge climber. And I remember with the loss of that home base, and really that was the word that was always in my head, with the loss of that home base and coupled with feeling very close to death and dying, I felt very close to the fragility of life. I always felt like death is really not far away. Both these things had an effect on my climbing. All of a sudden, I didn't quite feel as adventurous. I felt closer to death on the climbs. I didn't have any panic attacks with it, but I certainly didn't feel confidence. It was interesting to notice those things. And that went on for starters, the first year was rough, really rough, and I was in touch with it. And then slowly but surely it dissipates. And it took 3 Christmases before I realized that the Christmas season, which is also my mom's birthday, and then my birthday in January, is a season that is charged for me. And it took 3 years before I realized, or actually it was one of those aha moments, wait a minute, Am I feeling off? Do I feel off every Christmas because it's Christmas, a family time, and then my mom's birthday, and then my birthday, and that's all family time stuff? I had an aha moment with that. And then all of a sudden I wondered why I always volunteered for stuff at Christmas. I was handing out Christmas meals, being out on the streets. I was doing stuff like that. It all made sense. It made sense for how I was with relationships as well, whether that's friendships, relationships. Basically, I felt like, yeah, enjoy me when I'm there, because I can't guarantee that I will be. How's that for an attachment effect? So maybe, even though I was social, maybe I'd be categorized in that avoidant attachment realm. Not sure. Just wondering. To a certain extent, it carries through to this day. I've always been able to very easily do stuff on my own. I have a hard time accepting help. I don't like to ask for help. Sometimes when people help, I just find it annoying. Just, F off and let me take care of it. Again, I just question the attachment disruption and the effect of that, where I've just learned to rely on myself. And of course, that's the first major loss. And then the next major loss, for those that know me, you'll probably think, oh, he's going to talk about Quinn. But no. 6 years of infertility. I don't even remember how long. 6? Was it 6 before we were pregnant? Anyway, number of years of infertility. And what I'm going to call that, what my wife and I came to realize, is that was a monthly grieving process. So you have this buildup. There's a time during the month, where you can get pregnant. So now you have to have sex at that time of month. And sometimes that was fantastic, and other times it was literally a chore. And then you would always end up with disappointment, with loss, with grief, every month. So if that's not torture, I don't know what is. That was brutal. And if anybody here as well has suffered some infertility, even if it's been for a year, you know what I'm talking about. And then, through in vitro, we're finally pregnant with Quinn. And then that was a fantastic pregnancy. And it's a pregnancy that ended horribly with Quinn's death. And that was devastating. How did I take that? That's a good question. I can still lean into that at different times, because sometimes I honestly forget that ever happened. So hence, maybe the next diagnosis has something to do with dissociation, or at least like Alana's presentations and all that, some dissociation for safety, because I certainly don't want to be in touch with that all the time, let me tell you. But in the beginning, I was very much in touch with that, with moments of dissociating, moments of deep sadness, moments of wanting to heal. And here's where I can put in a plug, where I'm very thankful to be in a unionized environment, because I was able to benefit from being off work for 3 months to be able to, not so much to focus on healing. I won't say that, because it's not like I was waking up every morning trying to heal. I don't even know how you do that anyway. But it was fantastic to have a 3-month period that was devoid of responsibility, where there's no concern about financial, to just be. And that was extremely helpful. And I can honestly say that at the end of 3 months, I was ready to come back to work. Not that it was easy, but I was ready. And how have I lived that since then? Well, I'm definitely attentive to all things stillbirth. We have a trail here named after Quinn that every time I ride by, I pump my heart on that one. And I go between not thinking about it to being wrapped up in it pretty deeply. And that's just occasional. Sometimes I have a problem with the idea that we're supposed to remember all the time, or I have a reaction when people talk about, I'll never forget. I don't know what's good or bad. Everyone's going to have your journey. But my journey is that sometimes I do forget, but I do know that the memory always comes back. Matter of fact, I keep reminders around me. And I'm very thankful for that too, because sometimes even just that drags me in. Or another little piece of insight. It's amazing how Freya is aware that she has a brother and talks about him as something really important to her. So, the next one is Ray. And I don't know what to say about that one, but that one was way too early. So I've already gone on about different things, grief. I'm just going to say that adds to it so that I don't go on too long, because I'm going to do another portion of this at home. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into some of the ways I deal with it in terms of keeping some memories around. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about this, because it does feel good to lean into it and share it, and especially with an awesome group of people. So thank you. So here we go. When I'm zooming with you guys, that's what I'm looking at over there. And it is awesome to have two screens. I can have speakers and presentations on one and the people on the other. Anyway, that's not why I'm doing this part. Keeping reminders. That's what I do. So, first of all, on my desk, always close by, I can show you a picture of my mom, Phyllis Denham. Died at 67 years old back in 96. Let me see, I'm forgetting. 96, 94? Oh my goodness. Anyway, a long time ago. And she's sitting at her desk in Place Ville Marie in Montreal. And I have another reminder of her right up here. And that's when she was in her 30s in Calgary, studying her master's at the conservatory, playing piano. I've just always loved that shot, because it really speaks a lot to who my mom was, and a part of her that was ripped away from her. But I won't get into that right now. And then over here, this cap is my representation of Quinn. I decided not to have pictures of Quinn up. I don't want to have to explain it to people. I'm in a therapy room. They don't need to hear about a dead baby. But I wanted my representation. So it's pretty much me and me alone, and now you, that knows that this toque, that is a toque for our little pond hockey team that we used to have called the Killer Rabbits, is my representation of Quinn. And then I'll show you the little representations at home, because that's part of how we deal with things. Bye now, and thanks again. Well, welcome to my home as I continue this discussion on how we represent the people that have died in our lives. And there's lots of different ways, and I'm just showing you how we've done ours. And it's amazing to take the time to think about. So here we are. Every morning starts over here with the coffee machine. And right beside the coffee machine, there is a picture of Quinn. A really neat passage that I can explain sometime. There's a really good story behind that. The mighty Quinn. It's part of the trail. And, of course, Freya. Oh, there we are in the background. Look at that. And then going over, the fridge is always the place for pictures. There's our fridge of chaos. And on that fridge, you'll find a picture of Quinn. Right in there. Born still. There he is. And you'll also find a picture of Athena. That's my brother on the top with his wife. And there's Athena, who passed away after a month. I told you that story. I'll leave it at that for now. And then over here, we made the decision to keep holding on to Quinn's ashes. And we like having them nearby. Freya likes having them. It's really cute on his birthday this year, walking around with his ashes. Maybe that's morbid. Who knows? And that's the elephant that the day after Quinn died, there was a nurse that came by. She was the first nurse that received us at the hospital. And she came and quite courageously brought us a stuffy. And if only she knew that we keep this stuffy with Quinn still, I think that would warm her heart. This whole area at one point was, without knowing it, you collect things and you're trying to remember, and you have items and things that people have given you, and it kind of became a shrine. And at some point, it was time to take the shrine down. And this is what we settled on. But even then, you can see there's pictures here, and I didn't even realize there were so many pictures, to be honest. It almost feels obsessive going over all of them, but it was obsessive before. But then there's a point where it's time to let go, and it's okay not to remember all the time, because it is always there, and you will remember. And lastly, I didn't really talk about Ray's passing, but there's the whole family. The year before was a family gathering, and boy, are we ever thankful of that. That was pre-COVID, and that's Ray right there, the latest important person within our family to die. So yeah, I'll probably talk a little bit live after this, but this concludes grief and loss as my contribution to the diagnosis potluck. Thank you for listening.